going to work on the center part of the flower for a little bit next. I'm going to start by basing in those areas just so that I don't lose where they're at. I'm going to use the Naphthol red to do that. This is really a beautiful red color. Okay, so for when you're just base coating, you don't need to be using extender in your brush. So I'm actually going to rinse my brush out now. I'm just going to use the round and wipe it on my paper towel and get the Naphthol red on the brush. And I don't know if you know this, but when you base coat with a round brush as opposed to a flat, you actually get a better coverage. So let's just fill in the shape of the petals here. Nice solid coverage. A couple of the areas I'm going to be a little bit more careful, but this is one spot that needs to be nice and solid. I'm going to avoid those two little things sticking up. They kind of remind me of the antennas on a giraffe for some reason. Get that filled in. I'm just kind of smoothing as I go. This brush is actually nice and soft, so it's a good one for softening the extra ridges away. Now I'm leaving just a hairline of area where that petal is flipping over. I want to try to remember where that is so that I don't have to retrace it on. And another thing, when you are basing in areas, if you pull the strokes in the direction that the vein lines would be, then if you do get ridges, it's not going to matter. It's just going to look like it's part of the vein line. So you can camouflage it easier. Okay, I've got a flipped over petal edge up here. You'll see this brush has a real nice point on it, so it's even though it's a big brush, it allows me to get into the little crevices. I can lift up and drag that little tip right into the little tiny areas, so I'm not having to switch between 10 million different brushes as I'm working. Alright, then I've got an area in here that I just don't want it quite as red. You're going to see in the finished picture that there's kind of like streaks of a lighter coming in connecting. So I'm just going to kind of pull some brush marks out so that I don't got a solid edge in there, and then I'll finish filling this petal in. Let's get under here, and I'll be able to blend that in afterwards. So I'm not real concerned at this stage. And there again, I've got this other little funny kind of a tendrily petal that flips out and around. This is actually my favorite part of the flower. It's just such a unique style. Okay, right up against the edge. The paint should be nice and creamy. I haven't thinned it with water. If it's nice and fresh, you can use it right from the bottle, but if it's feels dry, you can add a little drop of water to it. But this is nice and fresh, and I want a nice solid coverage, so anytime you add water, it's going to make your color more transparent. Okay, just leaving myself a little hairline section there, so I remember where that petal is. Oops, let's get this side as well. And I'm not going to worry about those little tendrils right now. I'm going to just do the main part of these petals, and they can wait and be a different color afterwards. Okay, so then we've got those. We're going to leave this section here. I'm going to leave. No, I'm not. I'm going to take that back. I'm actually going to get, that's the underside of this. I'm going to just kind of brush that in a little bit. It will get darker in there afterwards. Tuck that in. Okay, not going to do anything up in here. That'll be done with tints. Otherwise, I think I've pretty much got this in as solid as I want it. The little horns that are sticking out there, I'm actually going to fill those in with Indian yellow. Indian yellow is kind of an orangey yellow, and it's really, really pretty. So let's get that in there. Just kind of dab it in. Doesn't matter if it has a little bit of texture. Now, if I would have been painting this all on a black canvas, even if I were to have base coated the petal with flesh tone, it would not be as brilliant of colors as what I can get here. Now, where I've stopped with that yellow, instead of just leaving that edge, I'm just going to kind of blot it away. It's a transparent color, so you probably don't even need any extra extender in order to be able to do that. If you wanted, you could have done that with the tips of your red too, just so they weren't quite so sharp. In fact, I can even just kind of swirl, because I still had extender in my blender brush, so just kind of swirl that in there, kind of loosen that up a little bit. All right, now we'll let those areas dry. Let's go ahead and let's work on this section up in here and get that to pop out just a little bit more. Okay, so for up in there, I think I'm going to use a little bit of quinacridone violet along with the red. So the quinacridone violet, these are well-used bottles, by the way. I love these paint. They last so long. It really takes quite a while for you to run out of the colors. So I'm going to squeeze out a little bit of the quinacridone violet, and I'm going to use a combination of that and the red for now. And then I may even get a little bit of burgundy in there if I need it. Okay, so let's start with the quinacridone violet. Now, it's really a transparent color. I'm not going to pre-moisten this. I'm going to have extender in both sides of my brush though. All right, so I know that I want to have kind of a defined edge on the top of that, but skinny. Kind of pull it until I run into my purple there. And then it's going to come around like this. But remember, anytime you have like a sharp corner where your color has gone one direction and then another, you've got to kind of pull a little extra color in there so it's more of a triangle. Okay, and then let's just gently soften that edge. Wipe the brush off on my paper towel. Let's soften this top edge. I want it to just be kind of a blurry edge there. I pull it. I don't want to lose my nice white highlight, but if I do, I can always come back, put it in. I can always come back, put a little bit of the flesh tone in there too. there's just a little bit of flesh tone separating the white and the quinacridone violet right now. And just softening that. Okay. Okay, now I have a choice. I can either switch to a little liner brush, or I can try and use the tip of this brush because it's actually very thin. Okay, I've got this round circle here, so I want to get some lines here, but I want to follow the circle shape as I add those in. So I'm kind of curving so that it indents there a little bit. And just pulling, and you'll see that they do kind of all connect, but I want the little ragged tips to kind of show. Okay, now I'm going to just soften that inside section, but I want to kind of, I don't really want to lose those stroke lines, so if you need to just softly, softly, barely touch or catch them, curving into this center area here, kind of wraps around where your graphite line was. And let's soften that away as well. Clean off on my paper towel in between. There again, this might be an area, if you're not used to the brush, that you may want to switch to the smaller size in the Dirty Dancer. But let's just soften that down. Picking up a little bit of the red, naphthol red, and I'm going to get a little of that in there so it kind of breaks it up. And I may even afterwards, after I take a look at it, may want to come back even with a little burgundy, but it's not a lot, but it's just enough so that it's not just one color. You get little change, little tone change in the color, and I like that. A little bit more on these lines coming in here. But you can see what a nice skinny line, if I'm not putting any pressure down, that I can get with this tip, even though this is a big brush. Okay, but certainly if you have trouble, go ahead and switch to your liner brush. Alright, then I want to start tinting some of the red areas. I think the red is pretty much dry. Now I'm not going to add extender on top of this because I have not allowed very much time for this red to cure, and so I've got to be a little bit careful. I'm just going to have it in my paint color itself. I'm going to start with quinacridone violet and just put a little bit of the extender into that color, and I want to start kind of breaking up the color a little bit so it's not just all flat red. So on the top half of this flipped petal, I'm going to get some of the quinacridone violet, and it's not going to show up a whole lot now. It'll show up a little bit more as I get some of the highlights going in there. Let's get a little bit more of the shadow under the flip here. And I may decide after that I need to come back with some burgundy even. So I put that in there pretty solid. This is a beautiful transparent color, so it's pretty easy to blend in. And I did not moisten the surface first. I'm just using the extender in my brushes and in my paint color now. A little bit over on this other side too, just in that top corner. And soften the edge. If you wipe too much of it off, not a problem. Just go ahead and go back and put a little bit more in. Tap that in there. Alright, and then I want to to get some of this on this bottom curve. And soften that. It's just very subtle at this stage. And let's get some on the top of the curve up here. And you'll notice I'm not just making a skinny line, I'm actually pulling it in quite a ways into the petal, and then I just blend away that edge. Okay, now I messed over into my other petal where I don't want it. Now what you do when that happens is you take some type of a clean brush that just has water on it, and you can just gently kind of wipe that right off. Just a clean edge, and just kind of cut it right away, just like magic. Okay, let's get some more color going in here. I want some in the bottom of this same petal. So let's pull some of the quinacridone violet in the bottom half and soften that. Wipe the extra off on my towel all the time. Okay, then I want to get some down in this curve down in here and pull that up. I'm going to have a kind of a red, naphthol red edge here. I can either leave a little bit of space right now, or I can just come back and re-outline with the red afterwards. So whatever kind of makes more sense to you. I'm not going to fill the whole thing in, but I've got quite a wide area here that I've got this quinacridone violet. So I still want to see some of my red there, so I'm just soften away the edge on both sides, keeping that pretty dark if I can. I want to get it in the flip area here as well. And soften where I stopped. I'm going to kind of give it kind of a center crease. So I'll lay a line down and basically just kind of soften on the right side. I can leave it a little bit of a hard edge on the left. Okay, then let's see. I think that's pretty good for now. I have to leave this little flipped one for the very end because I got to make sure that I'm done with that other petal in there before I can actually work on that one. But I could go ahead and get the other one done just so that you can see how I'm doing that. Alright, so I had not base coated that in with red here, but I am going to use quinacridone violet now and fill in where the flip area is. Get just a little bit more in here. Alright, then I think I'll just wipe my brush off, so I'm kind of using a dirty brush to pick up that white. Little touch of extender also. So it's actually more of a pinky color that I'm going to be able to melt that together. Fill it in. So my dirty brush with a little white made a pretty pink. Get that little tail. Alright, and then soften where those two colors connected. Okay, rinse my brush. I'm going to want a little stronger white tip on the very end here, so I'm going to totally clean my brush off. I want more of a pure white on that little flipped edge.